Hello and welcome to another bite-sized interview, explosive content from the Rangers Ravel podcast. It's myself, Robert, and I'm going to be joined today by Dutch football expert Michael Statham. Michael can be followed on socials at Eredivisie Mike as well. Mike is joining us to discuss the imminent arrival of Cyriel Dessers, announced this week on a four-year deal from Cremonese. Obviously, we're not going to touch on his time in Italy, Michael, because that would be pointless having you on. But we are going to touch about his time in Holland. Let's start way back in 2016, if we can. Dessers arrives from Belgium to Breda. What was known of him at that point?
I mean, I knew very little of him back then. But I think what happened is he took to seeing at Breda, the Dutch second tier, scored a bunch of goals, and a lot of people were like, right, he's going to go to the Eredivisie now. And he did with Utrecht, but didn't really get enough games, which was, I remember feeling at the time, I don't understand how someone who scored so many goals in the second tier isn't getting games at a mid-table Eredivisie side. And it only took then a move slightly lower down the table to Heracles Almelo, and he scored, well, he was the top scorer in the league, and he scored pretty regularly. And he started to take on this bit of a, I think for the club, Heracles at the time, a bit of a cult hero status. They've always now had good strikers at that club. And that's when I started to see the real Cyriel Dessers that I know today. Was in that one season at Heracles, like, this is the player, this is the striker that we know can do really well. He's definitely a confidence player, a bit of a poacher, good finisher. Yeah, and since then, really, he's just gone on to have, I think, a good career. And this move to Rangers is a really exciting one.
Oh, it's a massive move for him, certainly. I had to sort of look at his club sort of back catalogue, if you like, and as you say, a bit up and down, a bit irregular, and maybe that does come from confidence. He'll certainly get a lot of confidence from playing in front of the Ibrox crowd, and you say there as well, a cult hero at Hercules, which is great news for me. I love that stuff. We're needing a cult hero. We've just lost one in Alfredo Morelos, so another one coming in is much welcome. You mentioned there the time at Utrecht, and I did want to touch on that because, you know, he spent two years there. Not a lot of goals in terms of the game ratio. Was there injuries there, or was he just out of favour? Do we know?
Yeah, there were some injuries there, from what I can recall, and he just couldn't quite break into that first team. The only thing I can allude to at the time was a feeling of he doesn't quite fit their style of play, and he was more of a poacher. They wanted someone who was a bit more build up and all that. They even remember playing like a number 10 at one point, but that's not Dessers at all. He's a striker. And it was only when he moved on from there that he could really sort of thrive, because he was put as the main striker, 4-3-3. He had people around him to support, but he was the main striker. I know that Rangers are probably looking at playing two up top. I've been on a couple of these kinds of shows now, like you're potentially looking at Lammers and Dessers together. I don't want to come on here and say it's all sunshine and rainbows for Dessers, but he is, I think, the better signing out of the two. I don't think Sam Lammers is going to give you the goals. I did once rate Lammers as a player breaking through at PSV, but it was his injury, his long-term injury, that took him out for most of the season there. Then COVID struck, so he didn't really play many games then because the Eredivisie was on pause and didn't resume. And his career since then, I don't know why he moved to Italy. It's such a bad move. He's had a few years where he just hasn't really scored goals, whereas Dessers has had, from what I recall, 2 very strong seasons and a few okay ones. But I do think at Rangers he's going to hit the ground running.
Oh, listen, I'll be back looking after you if that's correct. That's what we want. We want players to come in and hit the ground running. Certainly, you mentioned there his style of play and being a poacher. I read an article from a Scottish journalist just yesterday on about maybe Michael Beale's brought him in because Dessers could be used in a high press. Is that something you'd agree with? Yeah,
and that brings me nicely to his time at Feyenoord. So after Heracles, he went to Belgium, didn't work out from there, and then Feyenoord took him on loan. Couldn't afford to get him permanently, as they didn't want to pay expensively for a second striker. Except he would have been a good move because he was their second choice striker, but played an awful lot of games. He was a top goal scorer in the Europa Conference League in his year with Feyenoord. He came off the bench a lot to score a lot of goals. I need to really find out what this record was, but he had like a record for scoring the most amount of goals in a row from the bench in the Eredivisie. I think it was like 6 in a row. But it was crazy. He kept coming off and scoring, like, admittedly in those games where they're already winning 2 or 3-0 and he scores an extra one. But there were also games where he come on and score a winner. So he has the potential to come on and be an electric player, but I don't think Rangers are getting for that. I think they will use him as a starting striker, especially if he scores a few goals from the get-go. I don't think he's going to score like 40, 50 goals, but I do think he'll be regular goal scorer in the Scottish League, and his poaching ability, that cliche fox in the box, he's a bit of that. And if you play through balls to him as well, he will run onto those. You mentioned the high press. So at Feyenoord, they were kind of known for that, playing players really hot the pitch. Arne Slot loves a bit of a high press. Dessers could really do that. Very aggressive. He would run so much trying to win the ball, chasing players down, hounding them, and yeah, he would win the ball high at the pitch sometimes, because that's the way Feyenoord like to play. They still do play the same way. Dessers was one of those players who fit them at the time, and I think now with Feyenoord winning the league, going with Champions League, it wouldn't quite fit that level for me. But I do think now at Rangers, Europa League potentially, or Champions League, I don't know. But I do think he'll fit in there, and I think he'll take on that. Because at Feyenoord, it was the same as Heracles. He was really well liked by fans, by supporters. And you could just see it, like his face would light up with scoring a goal. He loved the fans there. Feyenoord got some brilliant home fans. And I think Rangers will be exactly the same.
Oh, that's again music to my ears, because I love that relationship with supporters with players. I think it's so important. We just brought a couple in January, in Todd Cantwell and Nico Raskin, and the fans have taken them to their heart straight away. So I'm hoping it's going to be the same with the majority of these new guys as well. Rangers have signed him on a 4-year deal. He's 28 years old. He's never stayed at a club for that length of time.
No.
He seems to hit a peak and then move on. Do you think this could be his home? This could be sort of the making of him?
Yeah, I do. And why do I think that? Because it's what he's always been seeking. He only like halfway through his career did he find that with Heracles, and then when he went, well, I've got more ambitions now. I want to play internationally. He didn't choose Belgium in the end. He went for Nigeria. It's what he wants to do at the time. I want to move on and play for a top club, and he went to Belgium. For him, that was that. This is his kind of level. It didn't, like I said, wasn't the best move for him in the end. I can't speak about that too much about what happened in Belgium, but then coming back to the Netherlands, did really well again. And then going out to Italy, I mean, was it 6 goals in the top league, Serie A, for a team that got relegated? How much do you read into that if a team struggled? And then he's got relegated. He doesn't want to stay with a club that's in Serie B. He wants to stay in Serie A. Maybe he would have stayed there if they'd stayed up. So that's why I'm thinking, yeah, he has moved around a little bit, but it has been a team that he wants to move on and play for a bigger club, a team where he didn't play very much, a team that he wants to stay with because he was on loan, Feyenoord, and then got relegated from Italy. So I think this could be his home if it all goes well.
I sincerely hope so. I hope he can come and score goals and settle. Just something I noticed that from the club's sort of media launch when he signed, he looked a lot leaner than I've seen in videos of the past. He looked like quite a stocky player. Is that does he play with quite a physique?
I see him as quite an agile, aggressive, but not necessarily strong player. Like I wouldn't kind of put that out. He's not a target man. Not going to hold the ball very much. But yeah, he can play parts within that. I imagine he's leaning because maybe the club that he's been at, they want him to be a bit quicker, be one of those quick strikers rather than a strong striker. Can't speak about it too much though.
Just while we've got you as well, obviously you mentioned earlier on about Sam Lammers. He spent 5 years at PSV, and you say that he had high hopes from at that point.
Yeah.
Michael Beale seems to be clutching at players that maybe have had a bit of bad luck and are looking to sort of prove a point. Would he fall into that bracket?
Absolutely. When we at Football Oranje, where I do lots of like podcasts about Dutch football and that, we talked about him as like, oh, he's going to break through. He's going to be one of those strikers for Dutch national team, yada yada, one of the wonder kids. He was breaking through at PSV. He had a loan out at Heerenveen, mid-table club in the Eredivisie. He scored a bunch of goals, around about a rate of 1 in every 2. Was a main striker within that. Actually, quite a poor team as well. Managed to score goals, keep the mid-table. And then if he could go back to PSV, could be the second choice striker, but make some goals, break through, get some games in Europe. And he had an injury at the start of that season. He went back to PSV. He then came back. He played a few games, had an okay impact, and then COVID struck in the Netherlands. They didn't resume their season in the Eredivisie. Then after that, he decides to move to Atalanta, the club that are pushing higher up in Europe than say PSV were. He's not going to get a game there. He's had a few moves which I'm sure your followers are aware of, where he didn't really score any goals. I'm gutted for him because he had the potential at the time. The injury's not helped him. That move didn't help him. And you could suggest it's a bit of a step back, but actually he's still playing quite high up in Europe. He might have had some people saying, "Oh, come to the mid-table Eredivisie. That might be a good move back for you." But the money's not great in that part of the league. So he probably sees it as a bit of a financially good move again for him. He will want to stay. He will want to prove himself, a bit like Dessers. I'm sure this is their long-term vision now to succeed at a club like Rangers. I'm just not sure with Lammers, but he might prove his worth if he's more of a build-up striker, helps, because he's good with his feet. He's technically very good. Whether he's using those wide areas to help build the play rather than in the box a lot like Dessers will be. But yeah, Lammers has got his height. He has scored goals in his career, but it's going to be a make or break kind of move for him because of the age that he's at. But Michael Beale, I know I'm also an Aston Villa fan. He had made some good things with Villa before he moved on. He's a good coach, and I think if he can take that player and revisit that player that we saw when he was like 19, 20 years old, then yes, you're talking about a very good player again.
I think it's really important that you say that these players are looking for a home, and hopefully Ibrox can be that, and they can maybe leave a bit of a legacy with winning trophies. So we touched on PSV. Rangers obviously played them last season in the Champions League playoff. That could be something that happens again. You did say about Dessers maybe not being ready for that level. Obviously, Lammers has struggled for goals of late. It's a difficult one as a Rangers supporter, I must say, because you want to get into the Champions League for the riches, but I didn't enjoy many games, if any games, watching us in the Champions League last season. It was a real tough watch, whereas the Europa League the season before, we all know we got to the final and it was a wonderful, wonderful time. So it's trying to balance that up. How do you get into the Champions League and then try and play for third, or when clubs, provincial clubs such as yourselves in Europe, where do you place yourself? But these two players in particular, can they make that step up?
I think Dessers would be able to do that, but then this is quite late in his career to be doing that. He'd have to look at the form he had at Feyenoord. I think those kind of levels. And in terms of this tie in general, if this came out of the draw again, I think it's going to be like last time. I said last time it would be like 60-40 in the favour of PSV. Both clubs have had ups and downs in the previous year, but I'd see it as the same kind of level again, where Rangers could do it. But PSV are marginally better, but they didn't really play very well last time. So who's to say that they would suddenly play this much better again?
They were very, very tight games. Both games, particularly the second leg was like something they had a bit. We had a bit. It was good watch, but it was nervy. Obviously, as a Rangers supporter, trying to get into the next level. Just while I've got you, finally, obviously Rangers have been linked with Danilo at Feyenoord. Is that something that you could see happening, or is it just paper talk, social media talk? Talk us through your side of it.
So I've not heard as many strong rumours about Danilo, but I have heard about it. And I did wonder, well, you've signed Dessers, you won't need Danilo, because they're kind of similar mould strikers. But then I also heard that someone said, oh no, they want him as well, which did surprise me. That's not based on facts, but that's what someone said based on hearsay, I think. Danilo, though, similar to Dessers, I don't think he's quite as good as him. Danilo's a little younger. He's tried to stay at the top of the end of the Eredivisie. He had a loan to Twente and did quite well in that season, particularly in the first half of the campaign, but his goals dropped off after that. He went back to Ajax, was more of a bench player, but did score occasionally late on in games when he was given the opportunity. You're then thinking, he moved on to Feyenoord. Why do that sort of sideways step? Why not take a step back or move to another country? Because he's still not the first choice striker, but he did have some games where he did start because their other striker, Santiago Jimenez, Mexican striker, he's got the higher potential, exciting striker. He then took over like Danilo's role in the team. And Danilo didn't really get too much for looking and was again a bench player. But he is similar to Dessers in that he's quite an advanced forward. He plays quite hard the pitch, bit of a poacher. But doesn't help too much within that build-up play. But technically quite a good player.
Listen, again, another exciting one. I think the transfer fee is one that's eye-watering for a club in Scotland as well. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that one develops. Michael, no, listen, thanks for your time. You've been really, really insightful. I'm sure the listeners are going to enjoy this one. I've enjoyed it, and hopefully, if we do draw PSV, we'll come back and speak to you again.
Yeah, no problems. I'm sure Rangers and Dutch clubs are going to have much more to do with each other in the coming year or so.
Awesome. Have a great day. Thank you.